You know, when my Republican colleagues cozy up to neo-Nazis and the Proud Boys and white supremacist groups.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I find that offensive that the gentleman would make a broad statement like that. And I think that he should back that up with any individual, but not a broad group. That would be inappropriate for me and untrue.
Don't worry, I'm getting to the part you'll like.
Well, I don't. Okay. Perhaps you are. I find it offensive that you have used this forum.
Sure, no problem. Donald Trump had dinner with a Holocaust denier at his house. You want more facts?
Then use that, sir.
Sure, no problem.
This isn't your grandfather's Democratic Party. In the 3 months following the October 7th attack, there has been an increase of 360% of anti-Semitic incidents in this country. It was reported earlier this year that there was an exodus of Jewish families leaving Oakland, California, because of the anti-Semitic radicalization of the teachers' union in that city. This isn't 1930s Nazi Germany. This is 21st century California where we're seeing this happen. It's very clear. Far-left activists look to their leaders for direction. The Democratic thought leaders in that party sympathize with terrorists.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me just say, I've never heard so much BS in my life, to be honest with you. And let me just remind my colleagues that Donald Trump, the guy they apologize for constantly, is the one who let Iran attack U.S. troops. Donald Trump is the one who allowed not one, but dozens of Chinese spy balloons to fly overhead without telling us. Donald Trump is the one who gave classified Israeli intelligence to the Russians, intelligence they could have given to Iran. Donald Trump is the one who went to North Korea, remember that? And tried to get a brutal dictator to love him. He said, hey, Kim Jong-un and I are in love. Donald Trump is the one who tried to extort Ukraine by withholding our aid, and he was impeached over it. Donald Trump praises Putin. He fawns over Xi Jinping and Viktor Orban. And he says Kim Jong-un love letters. How pathetic. How pathetic.
Republicans in this committee and the culture warriors of Fox News keeps saying, look at the documents, look at the documents. So let's look. This purported investigation has received over 100,000 pages of documents, and not a single one shows any evidence of any wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense. And taking a step back, even if Joe Biden had discussed his son's business ventures with Tony Bobolinsky in 2017, and this is rhetorical, so what? What would be the high crime of misdemeanor? What would be the impeachable offense? We're talking about what private citizen Hunter Biden was doing with his time, at the time, private citizen dad. This impeachment inquiry is not about facts or evidence. It's not even about impeachable offenses. It's about keeping the American people distracted while we do nothing on reducing gun violence, nothing on lowering healthcare costs, nothing on reforming our criminal legal system.
Democrats could have sent anyone. They could have sent Hunter Biden. They could have sent Joe Biden. They could have sent Rob Walker. They could have sent Devin Archer. The Democrats could have sought any person to come and refute the direct evidence backed up by bank statements, backed up by calendar entries, backed up by emails, backed up by text messages. And who did the Democrats send to clear the name of Joe and Hunter Biden? They sent Lev Parnas. Lev Parnas, who was charged with enough crimes and violating our campaign finance laws to, serve 50 years, but he gets 4 months. The fraud he committed wasn't just on our election system by plowing Russian money. It was also a fraud on his own investors who didn't get it.
While we're on Mr. Gaetz, he seemed to be upset about a couple different things. One was fraud, which was fascinating to me, given that his hero, Donald Trump, has just been convicted civilly of bank and insurance fraud in New York in a civil case, and now owes, I think it's $454 million, unless that's gone up with interest. I think he's having a hard time making that, but I'm sure that Mr. Gaetz's constituents will help him out as they're shaking down Republican voters. You can pay either for Donald Trump's criminal lawyers or his civil lawyers. That's the big political choice, I suppose.
From day one, when Joe Biden took the oath of office, he issued an all-out assault on American energy. President Biden's war on fossil fuels doesn't cover all oil and gas. It only covers American oil and gas. And maybe that's the most perplexing part of his failed policies that angers people. And people have figured this out.
We have this thing called climate change that's taking place. And right now, especially in the state of Texas, we are losing so much of our farmland because of this thing called climate change. We just had wildfires that destroyed fires. We know that right now, when it comes to our sugar crops, we're having issues because it takes 6 years just to raise a sugar crop. So guess what? We've got to be creative. And honestly, if we would allow the Republicans to continue to decide on what we are going to do when it relates to energy, well, by gosh darn it, I think we'd still be in horse and buggy.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to this ridiculous Republican attempt to deny reality. You know, I must first start off by making sure that I can respond to some things that were just said. As a member of the Agriculture Committee, you probably know, just like I do, that we have a thing that we've been fighting for called sustainable aviation fuels. And this is something that we know. In speaking to organizations such as Boeing, we know that we can actually operate planes off of something like sustainable aviation fuels, and they are ready to do the hard work. And guess what? Our farmers are ready to participate. Our farmers need to make sure that they are going to expand their options for earning $1 because we have this thing called climate change that's taking place. It seems like advancements in technology are not what we're looking for. No one is saying that it's either or. What we're saying is that we need to make progress instead of being regressive. And so under this current administration, we know that we have a record amount of oil that is being produced, but that doesn't mean that we can't also be smart about our energy and move forward. So let me get to my prepared remarks. Instead of taking action to build on President Biden's progress, House Republicans would rather sit on the sidelines in the least productive Congress in modern history and ridicule rather than serve. In this resolution, Republicans ridicule the president's energy supply chain policy, but while Republicans ridicule Biden brings results. President Biden and the Democratic Party—
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Madam Speaker, I'll yield the gentlewoman another 2 minutes.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. President Biden and the Democratic Party brought billions of dollars in investment into the U.S. energy sector through the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans ridicule the president's record on jobs in the energy sector, but Biden is bringing over 1.4 million jobs to the U.S. through the IRA. Republicans ridicule the president's record on gas prices. These are the same Republicans, by the way, who are refusing to lift a finger to get critical aid to Ukraine, which would lower gas prices even more. Nevertheless, despite Republican inaction by sharing intelligence and training with the Ukrainians, Biden broke the blockade, lowering Americans' gas prices. Republicans ridicule the president's record on home energy affordability, but Biden brought billions of dollars to help families in need to pay their energy bills in each and every one of our districts through the LEHEP program, which Republicans refuse to fully fund.
My Republican colleagues support a president of the United States who's having dinner with a Holocaust denier at his house, and they remain silent. Silence is complicity. When there are Nazis,
Mr. Sessions.
I would like my time
Mr.
back,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Reclaiming
Well, I'm sure you'll get that back. Broad statements are inappropriate and are not worthy of this hearing.
I know you're in denial that he had dinner with a Holocaust
I was
denier.
unaware of it. So for you to assume that
that was
because there's—
national news for like a week.
that matters not.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say, Mr. Chairman, is this hearing needs to stay very cordial and very much on the level. And attacks like this are exactly why our country is going through what we're going through. And
Mr. Chairman, there needs to be a point of order actually in this.
There's no point of
Thank
order.
you, Mr. Chairman.
I called nobody out other than the former president of the United States, Donald
That
Trump.
is not correct, sir. You referred to Republicans.
Mr. Chairman, there needs to be a point of order,
That
please.
is, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you please admonish the people of this subcommittee and that we are trying to make progress together.
Mr. Chairman, there needs to be a point of order.
Yeah, and I'd like my time back, Mr.
We
Chairman.
need a point of order. You will get your time back. We're not running the clock. Okay. If there's no point of order, just continue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll go back to what I was previously saying, is that when Republican colleagues, not all of them, but some Republican colleagues cozy up to neo-Nazis and the Proud Boys and white supremacist groups.
Mr. Chairman, I would like for you to please.
Sir, there's no point of order
we need
here.
a point of order.
I know this is uncomfortable, but I want to get through this. So it's just a paragraph, and we'll be fine. So much for free speech. When some of my Republican colleagues cozy up to neo-Nazis, Proud Boys, and white supremacist groups because they are their voters, and when President Trump hosts Holocaust deniers at Mar-a-Lago, sometimes we hear silence.
You know, Donald Trump is the one who praised an angry mob who attacked the United States Capitol and injured people. That's all good for my friends on the other side. At every step of the way, Trump stood with America's adversaries and those who oppose democracy. I'm sorry that it's an inconvenient truth for my Republican friends, but it is the truth. And contrast that with Joe Biden. Joe Biden rallied the world to Ukraine's defense. He defended our ally Israel and their airspace. And he has rebuilt our image on the world stage and has stood up for democracy. My friends on the other side said nothing when the previous president was apologizing and praising every tin-horn dictator in the world who had no regard for human rights. Democrats are the party of democracy. Republicans can use whatever rhetoric they want about the far left or the far left that. Their party has been radicalized by MAGA extremists. Here we are at this late date debating legislation that is going nowhere, when in fact our allies, specifically Ukraine, is out of money and out of equipment to defend themselves against Russia. And my friends just sit there and twiddle their thumbs. This is pathetic. This is pathetic. I urge my colleagues to understand what's going on here. We're doing this exercise that is going nowhere. I don't know who it's designed to please, maybe to show that we're doing work when we're not doing work. We actually passed a bill on Iran months ago, 6 months ago to be exact, that's still here. They never even sent over to the Senate. This is all for show. And meanwhile, we have a real crisis on our hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's fair to say at this point that Republicans on this committee are relying on Mr. Bobulinski as their star witness. The only fact witness they have brought in person before this committee. So I think we'd all expect that Mr. Bobulinski would have extensive inside knowledge about the involvement they allege that President Biden and in Hunter's business ventures. As Mr. Parnas can vouch for, previous impeachment inquiries relied on whistleblowers and witnesses with intimate details of what went on, firsthand accounts of high crimes and misdemeanors. You could point to exactly what the allegations were and understand what was going on. There were laid out chains of events pointing to a named crime, lying under oath, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, incitement of insurrection. Yet we're left floundering here with zero direction and zero real evidence while we watch this kangaroo court struggle to continue on. And today we have Mr. Bobulinski, whose biggest contribution is that he had, quote, multiple meetings with Joe Biden. But let's be clear. He spoke with Joe Biden a grand total of 2 times in the span of less than 24 hours in 2017, and each was short. One in public, in the bar of a hotel, and then for a few minutes backstage of the Milken Conference after Biden spoke about the efforts to fight cancer, which took the life of his son, Beau. I think we also need to clarify that while Mr. Bobulinski is all of a sudden today claiming that they talked business, but at no point did he mention this during his deposition under oath with this committee. At 2 different points when asked about what was said in these conversations, Mr. Bobulinski's account made clear that he had 0 substantive business discussions with Mr. Joe Biden. Mr. Bobulinski described those conversations twice during his transcribed interview, and both times he provided the same accounts. I'll read from the transcript of your interview, Mr. Bobulinski. You stated that you and Joe Biden discussed your, quote, family background in detail, as well as the Biden family's background and Joe Biden's, quote, appreciation for the military. Pages 48 through 52 and 268 to 271 of the transcript had these accounts. Based on your own account, you had 0 discussion of CEFC, the Chinese energy company. You had 0 discussion on shares of equity or capitalization of this failed business venture. Based on your own account, you simply exchanged pleasantries about your families and shared values, the kind of small talk any person would make if they had the opportunity to meet the former Vice President of the United States, and moved on. Yet today, when my Republican colleagues are so desperate for actual evidence, magically that story changes. And that's really at the heart of everything we're discussing today. Mr. Bobulinski has also been pushing his texts as records as proof, yet the Wall Street Journal found that none of it showed any role for Joe Biden and Sinahawk Holdings, and even Fox News reported that there was zero evidence of business dealings involving Joe Biden. Mr. Bobulinski would have us believe that everyone is a liar except him, and except for when he's under oath. That everyone misremembers except for him and except for when he's under oath. The FBI, the Wall Street Journal, his business associations, all liars.
Mr. Parnas, how much time did you spend in prison? 4 months. 4 months. But
4 months.
But you were indicted for crimes that could have resulted in you spending 50 years in prison, right?
Right, they were false crimes. The judge saw through it.
Well, you went to trial and you were convicted, right?
I went to trial, correct.
And the crime was that you were trying to acquire marijuana licenses, and you took money from a Russian oligarch, and you tried to use that money to go give political donations and do what you had to do to acquire marijuana licenses. Is that about right?
That's what the crime was. That's what the indictment was. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like everyone here today, the only one working for a Russian oligarch was you. Right? I mean,
yeah, it was.
I just heard you.
I mean, it's public information.
Yeah, no, I just heard you wax
Gaetz.
poetic.
I got paid $200,000. You know how much I got paid.
You were really worried about our democracy, and you were here to warn us. But you were working for a Russian oligarch,
on
wanting
behalf
to
of
get
President
marijuana
Trump.
licenses. But then you didn't even do it. The fraud you committed against the Russian oligarch was that instead you spent the money on yourself. So, like, was that what you were doing to fight against Russia's aggression?
That's a lie.
Just taking their money? Well, that's what you were convicted of.
No,
but instead of spending 50 years in prison, you got 4 months. As this hearing continues, I look forward to hearing what Mr. Galanis thinks about how he was treated by the DOJ for telling the truth, as opposed to how you're treated for lying.
The DOJ didn't listen to the truth, because if they would listen to the
question,
truth, you
the
guys
question
would've been
Mr.
all in
Gaetz
jail.
had is
They
for
didn't want to
Mr.
hear the truth. You can't handle the truth, Matt Gaetz.
Look, well, the truth for you is taking money from Russians to buy marijuana businesses and then going to jail and then coming here to lie about Trump.
You should know better than anybody what
Gentlemen's time has
the DOJ is
expired.
about.
Chair
You
now.
should know better than anybody.
Gentlemen's time's expired.
So I guess, Mr. Bobulinski, as you hear Maxwell Frost, my colleague on the Democrat side, say that Mr. Parnas, fresh off of his prison time, is the most credible witness we've had to address these business dealings, what's your reaction to that?
I think it's laughable that the Democrats are asking Lev Parnas to weigh in on my credibility, a convicted felon that served jail time. I have an impeccable record. Now, he warned me earlier in this hearing that they're coming for me. I didn't
worry. I said just keep talking. You'll be there soon.
I look forward to that, Mr. Parnas.
Keep lying. You'll be there soon.
Well, and when
Is that a threat, Mr. Parnas?
No, it's just the truth.
No, did you say they were coming for me?
No, I said if you keep lying, you will end up in prison.
I'm not lying. You're the
Well,
one
then
who
if
was
you're not, you
lying.
have nothing to
You're the
scare.
one who went to prison
What am
for
I
lying.
lying for? Tell me what we're lying for, Mr. Bobulinski. You don't even know what you're talking about. What am I lying?
You went to
What is
prison
lying?
for lying and defrauding your
What
investors.
am I lying here? What am I lying here?
Oh, the list is
Go
long.
ahead,
We don't
go
have enough
ahead.
time. I
Exactly,
think Mr.
yeah.
Gaetz only has a minute.
I think you're a little scared, just like
So
Mr.
one
Gaetz.
crime
Because Mr.
is-
Gaetz doesn't even ask a question. You're filibustering. I've been here for 6 hours, and not one of your committee members has asked me one question. You want to
Well,
hear
I
the
asked you-
truth?
hold on,
no,
hold
you
on,
haven't-
Mr.
no, no. You
I
wanna
asked a
ask
question about
Get
your
to the
illegal
truth.
business
I've been here for
dealings.
7 hours.
Mr.
Ask me
Bobulinski,
some questions.
fraud is a
Stop
crime, right?
filibustering. Go ahead. Ask me.
Correct. Fraud is a crime.
Fraud is a crime, and you observed fraud on the part of the Bidens, right?
I did. Crystal clear.
If you check out the Democrats' report, White House for Sale, how princes, prime ministers, and premiers paid off President Trump, you'll find that China actually gave more than $5 million to Donald Trump while he was president of the United States, in direct violation of the Emoluments Clause, which says that nobody in federal office shall accept a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office or title of any kind whatever, from a king, a prince, or a foreign state. And we spent the day, again, jawboning about Hunter Biden, who has never held public office, and he's never done business with the government. And yet, we have right in front of us, in front of our very eyes, mammoth corruption, unprecedented in U.S. history by Donald Trump as president. And my friends don't say a single word about it. But he wants to lecture Mr. Parnas about the illegal donations he made on behalf of pro-Trump super PACs. I've noticed something interesting with the people who have finally disenthralled themselves and gotten out of the Trump cult, as Mr. Parnas puts it. People like Michael Cohen, Sarah Matthews, Cassidy Hutchinson, Alyssa Griffin. There's articles about them. There are dozens of those people, and I'd be fleeing for the exits now too. What's so fascinating to me about it is that they don't mind when these people lie for Donald Trump. Then when they get out and start telling the truth, that's when they call them liars for what they did when they worked for Donald Trump. Mr. Parnas, they're not mad that you lied and went to prison for it and did your time. They're mad that you've stopped lying for Donald Trump.
Absolutely, Congressman Raskin.
So when I was a state assistant attorney general, Mr. Chairman, I saw a judge on my very first day of work castigate a lawyer by saying, son, you forgot the very first rule of lawyering. When you go to court, you got to bring the evidence with you. You forgot to bring the evidence. There's no evidence. Hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, dozens of hours of testimony, but not a shred of evidence of presidential wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense by President Biden. And you're making not just the majority a laughingstock, the whole committee a laughingstock. So it's hurting us. My members are saying, when will they call off this nonsense? So here we are. Again, Mr. Parnas, I want to thank you. You have explained to America that the allegations at the very foundation of this inquiry were predicated on Russian propaganda and disinformation, just as they were at the start of the hit job that you and Rudy Giuliani were sent to do back in 2018 and 19. And I want to thank you for showing America what real intellectual honesty and personal honesty look like, and how you can grow out of the deranged Trump syndrome that so many of our colleagues are still suffering from today. It's time to call this investigation for what it is, Mr. Chairman. It's not just an embarrassing failure and an historic failure at that, but it's an historic betrayal of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law as Vladimir Putin tramples the freedoms and the democracy of people in Ukraine. We should be spending our time standing up for democracy and not tarnishing it with spectacles like this. I yield back.
I should have brought my waders from the farm.